I never told this to anyone, but I need to get this weight off my chest. Everyone in my neighborhood avoided my neighbor. They called her a witch, a cheapskate, a grumpy old woman. And when she passed away and left only 12 old shoeboxes in her will, her family laughed in my face. They said I had wasted my time taking care of her. But when I opened those boxes and discovered what was hidden inside, I understood that the woman everyone avoided had saved the entire neighborhood in silence. And her greedy family? They lost everything. Let me tell you from the beginning. Miss Adelaide lived in house number 42. 82 years old, alone, surrounded by cuckoo clocks and yellowed curtains. She never turned on the lights, never turned on the fan. She complained about the price of everything. Children crossed the street when they saw her on the sidewalk. Adults pretended they were not home when she knocked on the door. And me? I was the only person who still showed up there every week. My name is Clara. I am 28 years old and I am a nurse. I take care of elderly people that families leave behind. And Miss Adelaide was my most difficult patient. But she was also the one who intrigued me the most. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I brought homemade soup. And every Tuesday and Thursday, she complained.
Soup again, Clara? You spend too much gas cooking this. Did you turn off the living room light before leaving your house? The electricity bill does not forgive, dear.
I smiled and placed the plate on the table. Miss Adelaide, you need to eat. You are too thin.
Thin? Thin is an excuse from people who want to spend my money on medicine. I am fine. Now go because I have things to do.
Things to do. She spent the whole day sitting in the same armchair, staring at the wall. But I never argued. I just left the soup and went away. The neighbors did not understand. Why do you waste your time with that lady? That was what I heard the most. And I never knew how to explain it properly. Maybe because when I looked into her eyes, I did not see anger. I saw tiredness. The tiredness of someone who carried too much weight for too long. But I only understood that after she passed away. Miss Adelaide had 2 nephews, Gustavo and Beatrice. Fancy people. They showed up once a year on her birthday. They arrived in imported cars, expensive watches, designer clothes. They stayed 20 minutes, asked if she needed anything, and disappeared. But I saw how they looked at the house. They measured every room with their eyes. They calculated the value of the land. They were just waiting. And the wait ended on a Wednesday in September. I arrived for my visit and found the door half open. I called, nobody answered. When I entered the bedroom, Miss Adelaide was lying on the bed. She seemed to be sleeping, but I had seen that kind of silence before. She had passed away, in peace, as she always lived. The funeral was small, me, the priest, and 3 curious neighbors. Gustavo and Beatrice arrived late, wearing dark glasses, and stayed in the corner, whispering about the inheritance. 3 days later, came the reading of the will. We were all in the living room of her house. The lawyer was holding a yellowed envelope. Gustavo was tapping his foot on the floor, impatient. Beatrice was looking at her nails as if all of this was a waste of time.
Let us get on with this, Mr. Lawyer. The old woman never spent a penny. The bank balance must be quite full.
Mr. Gustavo, Miss Adelaide's bank balance is $82.
The silence was so heavy that you could hear the cuckoo clock in the hallway.
Impossible. She lived in the dark. She never bought anything. Where did her money go in these 40 years?
Miss Adelaide left very specific instructions. I will read the will in full.
He opened the envelope slowly, as if he knew the weight of what was coming next.
To my blood heirs, Gustavo and Beatrice, I leave exactly what they gave me in life. Nothing. To Clara, my only true friend, I leave the 12 shoeboxes under my bed. May she know what to do with the truth.
Shoeboxes? Is this a joke? This is not possible.
I knew she would do something like this. Let us contest this, Gustavo. She clearly was not right in the head.
I did not say anything. I stood there trying to understand. Shoeboxes? What did Miss Adelaide want me to find? Gustavo got up and went straight to the bedroom. I followed him. He bent down, pulled the boxes from under the bed, and started opening them one by one, throwing the lids aside with anger.
Paper. It is just old paper. Receipts, letters, junk. I cannot believe I came all the way here for this.
He pushed one of the boxes with his foot. The contents scattered across the floor, and it was when I bent down to pick them up that I saw what was really there. It was not junk. It was a handwritten letter, yellowed by time, and at the top, a sentence that made my heart race. Miss Adelaide, you saved my life. I looked at Gustavo. He was too busy complaining to notice. But I noticed, and in that moment, I understood that the woman everyone called a witch was actually an angel that no one could see. I picked up the letter carefully and started to read. And what was written there was just the beginning. My hand was shaking while I held that yellowed letter. The words at the top still echoed in my head. Miss Adelaide, you saved my life. Gustavo was huffing behind me, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. Beatriz was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, staring at the ceiling as if all of this was a waste of time. But I could not take my eyes off that paper.
Are you going to stand there all day? Read that already, and let us end this nonsense.
I took a deep breath and started reading out loud. Dear Miss Adelaide, you do not know me, but I owe everything I am to you. My name is Samuel. I grew up in an orphanage in Ohio. I never had a family. I never had anything. When I turned 18, they told me I had to leave and figure things out on my own. I wanted to be a doctor, but I did not have a penny in my pocket. Then one day I received a letter. There was no return address. It just said, "Your college is paid for. Go be the doctor you were born to be." I stopped reading. My voice was failing.
So what? This does not prove anything. Anyone can write a letter.
I ignored her and continued. For 8 years, someone paid for my college, my books, my apartment. I never knew who it was. I thought it was some government program, some scholarship I had won without knowing. I graduated, I became a surgeon, I worked in the best hospitals in the country. And then, 20 years later, I received another letter. This time it had a name. Adelaide. You wrote to me saying that you had followed my career from a distance, and that you were proud, and you asked for only one thing in return for everything you did for me.
Let me guess, money?
No, Gustavo. She wrote, help someone when you can. That is all I ask. The silence that followed was heavy. Even Beatriz uncrossed her arms. I kept reading the end of the letter. Miss Adelaide, I followed your request. In the last 15 years, I paid for the college education of 12 young orphans just like you did for me. I will never be able to repay what you did. But I will pay it forward for the rest of my life. With eternal love, Dr. Samuel. I folded the letter carefully. My hands were still shaking.
This is ridiculous. A letter from 30 years ago is worth nothing. Where is the real money?
I looked at the shoebox on the floor. That was just the first letter. But there was much more inside. I bent down and started taking out the other papers. There were dozens. No, there were hundreds. Letters of all sizes, all colors, all time periods. Some dated from 40 years ago, others from just 2 years ago. And all of them started the same way. Miss Adelaide, you changed my life. There were letters from teachers, nurses, firefighters, veterinarians. People from all corners of the country. People that Adelaide helped in secret without ever asking for anything in return.
Enough of this madness. Give me those boxes.
Gustavo came toward me. I took a step back, holding the box against my chest. No, these boxes are mine. The will was clear.
You are nothing but a little nurse who cleaned my aunt's house. You think you have a right to anything here? Give that to me now.
Mr. Gustavo, I recommend that you calm down. The boxes legally belong to Miss Clara. Any attempt to take them by force can be considered an act against the law.
Gustavo stopped in place. His face was red. I could see a vein pulsing on his forehead.
Gustavo, let us go. This is a waste of time. We will solve this another way. We will hire our own lawyer and end this farce.
You do not know who you are dealing with, Clara. This story does not end here.
The two of them left through the front door, slamming it hard. The noise echoed through the empty house. I stood there, still holding the box, with my heart racing. The lawyer approached me.
Miss Clara, I need to tell you something. Miss Adelaide came to me 6 months ago. She knew she did not have much time, and she made me promise that I would protect you and these boxes. She said you were the only person she trusted.
But why? I just brought her soup. I did not do anything special.
Miss Adelaide would disagree. She told me that you were the only person in 20 years who looked into her eyes and saw a person, not a nuisance. She said you had a pure heart, and that only a pure heart could understand what is in these boxes.
I did not know what to say. I looked at the box in my hand, then at the other 11 still under the bed. What else is in these boxes?
That I do not know. Miss Adelaide never showed me. She only said that each box tells a part of the story and that the last box has the complete truth.
The lawyer grabbed his briefcase and headed toward the door.
I will leave you alone to continue. But be careful with Mr. Gustavo and Miss Beatrice. They will not give up easily. There is something in these boxes that they do not want you to discover.
He left and closed the door slowly. And then I was alone. In Miss Adelaide's house, surrounded by the smell of lavender and the tick-tock of the cuckoo clocks. I sat on the floor next to the bed and looked at the 11 remaining boxes. Each one of them held a piece of the life of a woman everyone misjudged. A woman who lived in the dark to light up the lives of others. I picked up the second box. It was heavier than the first. I removed the lid slowly, and what I saw inside made me understand that Miss Adelaide was not just generous. She was fighting a war. A silent war that no one in the neighborhood knew existed. But I was about to find out. Inside the second box, there were no letters. There were receipts. Hundreds of yellowed receipts, organized by year. And all of them had one thing in common. They were proof of mortgage payments. Mortgages on houses that did not belong to Adelaide. She was paying the debts of her neighbors. In secret. For decades. I picked up one of the receipts. The name at the top was Miss Marta, the widow who lives on the street behind us. The date was from 15 years ago. The amount was $12,000. Paid in full. And there was more. Much more. Mr. Antonio, Miss Lucia, the Robertson family, the Chen family, the Williams family. Names and more names. Entire families that almost lost their homes, but were saved at the last minute by an anonymous payment. And all of these people still live here. All of them still called Adelaide a witch, a cheapskate, a grumpy old woman. None of them knew. None of them had any idea that the most hated woman in the neighborhood was, in truth, the only one holding everything together. I leaned my head against the bed and closed my eyes. My chest hurt in a way I could not explain. Why did you never tell anyone, Miss Adelaide? Why did you prefer to be hated? The house did not answer, just the tick-tock of the clocks. But I knew that the answer was there, in those boxes, and I was going to find it. I put the receipts back in the box and looked at the other 10. There was still a lot of history to discover. That was just the first box, and I had 11 more to open. I spent the whole night in that house. I could not leave. I could not let go of those boxes. The receipts from the second box were still scattered on the floor. Each yellowed paper told a story. A family saved, a house preserved, a life that continued because someone paid a debt in secret. I organized the receipts by name. There were more than 40 different families. 40 families that almost lost everything, but were rescued at the last minute by an anonymous payment. And the person behind all of this was the woman the entire neighborhood called a witch. I picked up the third box. This one was even heavier than the others. When I removed the lid, I found more receipts. But these were different. They were not for mortgages. They were for hospital bills. Medical treatments, surgeries, medications. Adelaide was not just saving houses, she was saving lives. I picked up one of the receipts. It was for heart surgery done 12 years ago. The patient's name was Michael Thompson. The amount was $87,000. Paid in full, in cash. I did not know this name, but there was an address on the receipt. It was here in the neighborhood. I kept looking at the other papers. There was a receipt for chemotherapy for a woman named Dorothy Williams. Complete treatment. 18 months. More than $120,000. There was a receipt for orthopedic surgery for an 8-year-old boy. There was a receipt for hospitalization for a teenager with serious problems. There was a receipt for physical therapy for an elderly man who had an accident. Each paper was a life. Each receipt was a person who continued existing because Adelaide decided they deserved a chance. And none of these people knew. I leaned my back against the wall and stared at the ceiling. The sun was already rising. The golden light came through the gaps in the yellowed curtains. The cuckoo clocks kept marking time, indifferent to everything I had discovered. How can a person carry a secret like this for so long? How could she look into these people's eyes every day, hear them calling her a cheapskate, a grumpy old woman, a witch, and never say anything? I remembered an afternoon, about 3 months ago. I had gone to bring the soup as always. Adelaide was quieter than normal. I asked if she was okay.
I am great, dear. Just tired. When you reach my age, the body weighs more than the soul.
I did not understand what she meant that day. Now I understood. Her body was heavy because she carried the entire neighborhood on her back, and her soul was light because she knew she had done the right thing. I went back to looking through the receipts in the third box, and then I saw a name that made me stop. Clara Santos. My name. My heart started racing. I picked up the receipt with both hands. It was for a scholarship for nursing school, dated 8 years ago. Total course value, $32,000. Paid in full by Adelaide. I could not breathe. 8 years ago, I was about to give up on my dream. My mother had just gotten sick. My father had left us. I did not have money to pay for college, and I needed to work to support the household. And then, out of nowhere, I received a letter saying I had won a full scholarship. A scholarship from a foundation I had never heard of. I thought it was luck. I thought it was destiny. I thought something good was finally happening in my life. It was Adelaide. All this time, it was Adelaide. The tears started rolling down my face. I could not hold them back. The woman I took care of for the last 2 years, the woman I thought I was helping, had actually helped me first. She had changed my life before I even knew her. And she never said anything, never asked for gratitude, never charged anything, never even mentioned it. I stayed there crying on the floor of that old house, surrounded by papers that proved that the most hated person in the neighborhood was, in truth, the most generous one who ever lived. When I managed to compose myself, it was almost noon. I needed to get out of there. I needed to process all of this. But first, I had to do something. I took Miss Marta's receipt from the second box and put it in my pocket. She lived on the street behind us. She was a 75-year-old widow who lost her husband a long time ago. I saw her sometimes at the market, always friendly, always smiling. And she had no idea that Adelaide had saved her house. I locked Adelaide's house and went to the street behind. Miss Marta's house was small, with a garden full of flowers and a white fence. There was a little sign on the door that said, "Home Sweet Home." I knocked on the door. It took a while, but she answered.
Clara? What a surprise, dear. Come in, come in. Would you like some coffee?
Miss Marta was a short lady, with white hair and kind eyes. Her house smelled like cookies and lavender. There were family photos on every wall. Miss Marta, I need to show you something.
What is it, my dear? Did something happen? Your eyes are red.
I took the receipt out of my pocket and handed it to her. Do you remember when you almost lost this house? 15 years ago after Mr. Harold passed away?
How could I forget? It was the worst moment of my life. Harold had left many debts that I did not know about. The bank was going to take the house. I was already packing my bags to go live with my sister in another state.
And what happened?
A miracle. Simply a miracle. One day I received a letter from the bank saying that the debt had been paid off. In full. I called them thinking it was a mistake, but it was not. Someone had paid everything. $12,000. I never found out who it was.
I pointed to the receipt in her hand. It was Miss Adelaide.
What?
Miss Adelaide. The neighbor from the old house. The one everyone called a witch. She was the one who paid your debt.
That is not possible. That old woman barely looked at my face. One time she complained that my flowers were taking over the sidewalk. She did not like anyone.
She liked everyone, Miss Marta. She just did not want anyone to know. I told her everything. About the will, about the boxes, about the hundreds of receipts, about the dozens of families that Adelaide saved in secret. Miss Marta started crying before I finished.
My God, my dear God, all these years. I walked by her house so many times and I never...
She could not finish the sentence. The tears would not let her. I held her hand. You had no way of knowing. Nobody knew. She made sure to hide it.
But why? Why did she never say anything?
I wanted to know too. But I think for Miss Adelaide, kindness did not need an audience. She did not do good to be seen. She did it because it was the right thing. Miss Marta stayed silent for a long time. Then she looked at me with her eyes still full of tears.
I need to tell the others. Mr. Antonio, Miss Lucia, the Robertson family, they need to know. Everyone who called that woman a witch needs to know who she really was.
I thought about the other 9 boxes that were still in the house. I thought about what the lawyer said about the last box having the complete truth. I thought about Gustavo and Beatriz and the fear they had about what I might discover. You can tell them, Miss Marta. But give me a few more days. There's still a lot that I need to find out. She nodded her head and hugged me tight.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you for telling me. I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor what that woman did for me.
I left Miss Marta's house with a heavy heart and a head full of questions. Adelaide had saved dozens of families. She had paid debts, surgeries, college tuitions. She had given desperate people a second chance. And she had done all of this living in the dark, saving every penny, being called cheap by the very people she was helping. I remembered one time I went to the grocery store with her. She spent 10 minutes choosing the cheapest bread. She complained about the price, said it was ridiculous to charge so much for flour and water. The cashier girl rolled her eyes. I was embarrassed. But now I understood. Every penny Adelaide saved on bread went to someone's hospital bill. Every light she turned off was a mortgage payment made. Every complaint was a sacrifice in disguise. Adelaide was not cheap. She was carrying an entire neighborhood on her back, and I still had 9 boxes to open. 2 days passed. 2 days of silence. No sign of Gustavo or Beatriz. I almost started to think they had given up. How naive. I was in Adelaide's house, sitting on the bedroom floor, organizing the receipts from the 3rd box, when I heard the sound of cars parking in front. It was not 1 car. It was 2. I went to the window and peeked through the curtain gap. Gustavo got out of the first car, adjusting his tie as if he were going to an important meeting. Beatriz got out of the second, wearing sunglasses and high heels, even though it was 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. And with them, a man I did not know. Black suit, leather briefcase, face of someone who charges by the hour and charges a lot. They had brought backup. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and went to open the door.
Clara, we need to talk.
Good morning to you too, Gustavo. He ignored my comment and walked in without being invited. Beatriz passed by me as if I were a piece of furniture. The unknown lawyer at least had the manners to nod before entering. They went straight to the living room and sat down as if they owned the house. Which, technically, they thought they did.
This is Dr. Richardson. He is a specialist in inheritance law, and he is going to explain why this ridiculous will has no validity whatsoever.
I crossed my arms and stood there, leaning against the wall. I have a lawyer too, the lawyer that Miss Adelaide herself chose.
That little old man? Please, Clara. He must have graduated when the typewriter was still a novelty.
He was available when you needed to read the will. He seemed competent enough that day. Beatriz rolled her eyes. Her lawyer opened the briefcase and took out a stack of papers.
Miss Clara, I will be direct. My clients are prepared to contest Miss Adelaide's will on the basis of mental incapacity. We have reasons to believe that she suffered from dementia in the last years of her life, and that you may have exercised undue influence over her.
I almost choked. Undue influence? I brought her soup twice a week.
Exactly. You were the only person with regular access to Miss Adelaide, an elderly woman, isolated, vulnerable. It would not be difficult for someone with bad intentions to manipulate a person in that situation.
I felt my face heat up with anger. Bad intentions? I took care of her for 2 years. I brought medicine, checked her blood pressure, kept her company. Where were you all this time? You showed up once a year to see if she had passed away and measure the size of the living room.
Watch what you say, young lady.
Or what, Gustavo? Are you going to yell at me again? Are you going to threaten me? The room fell silent. Gustavo was red in the face. Beatriz was staring at the ceiling, pretending to be bored. Their lawyer seemed uncomfortable. And then, as if it had been planned, the front door opened, and Adelaide's lawyer walked in. He was also carrying a briefcase, but his looked older and more worn. Experience, I thought.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry for being late. Traffic was complicated.
He came over to where I was and stood by my side. Suddenly, I felt less alone.
Doctor, I was just explaining to Miss Clara that we intend to contest the will. Miss Adelaide clearly was not in mental condition to make decisions of this magnitude. Clearly? Based on what exactly? Based on the content of the will itself. Leaving the entire inheritance to a nurse she had known for only 2 years, instead of blood relatives. That is irrational behavior. Irrational or simply inconvenient for your clients.
I almost smiled. I like this lawyer.
In any case, the claim of mental incapacity will not succeed. Miss Adelaide had a complete psychiatric evaluation 3 months before she passed away. I have here the report signed by 2 independent doctors. Memory intact. Logical reasoning preserved. Full capacity to make decisions.
He took the documents from his briefcase and placed them on the table. The nephew's lawyer picked them up and started reading. His expression changed as he went through the pages.
This is ridiculous. That old woman barely knew what day of the week it was.
Mr. Gustavo, may I ask you a question? How many times did you visit your aunt in the last 5 years?
Gustavo stayed silent.
I have the record of visits. Miss Adelaide wrote everything down in a notebook. You showed up 7 times in 5 years. Miss Beatrice, 5 times. Miss Clara showed up more than 200 times in the same period.
She was paid to do that.
Was she? Did Miss Clara receive any salary from Miss Adelaide?
Beatrice opened her mouth and closed it. She did not know the answer, because she had never asked.
Miss Clara was a volunteer. She took care of Miss Adelaide in her free time without receiving anything in return. Unlike the nephews, who only showed up when they needed something.
The silence in the room was heavy. Gustavo was red with anger. Beatrice had finally taken off her sunglasses and looked lost.
That does not change anything. We are going to take this to court. We will prove that this nurse manipulated our aunt.
Manipulated? Gustavo, I did not even know she had money. I thought she was poor. Everybody thought so.
Wait.
Beatrice raised her hand, interrupting everyone. She had a different expression now. Calculating.
Clara, dear, let us be practical here. You are a nurse. You make what? 3,000 a month? 4? We can solve this in a way that benefits everyone.
What do you mean?
The boxes. You hand us the boxes and we give you a compensation. Let us say $50,000 in cash. Today.
I blinked. $50,000 was more than I made in a year.
Think about it. $50,000 for you to leave and forget this story. Nobody needs to know. Nobody needs to fight. Everybody wins.
I looked at her. Then I looked at Gustavo. He was tense, waiting for my answer. And that is when I understood. They were not just after money. If it was just that, they would not offer $50,000 to a nurse. There was something in those boxes they wanted to hide. Something worth much more than $50,000. No.
No, Clara, you're being irrational. $100,000. That is my final offer.
You can offer $1 million. The answer will be the same. Those boxes belong to Miss Adelaide. She left them to me, and I'm going to find out what is in each one of them.
You do not know what you are getting into. That old lady knew too much. She kept things she should not have. If you open those boxes, you will regret it.
The silence that came after was different. It was not tense, it was revealing. That old lady knew too much. I looked at Adelaide's lawyer. He had noticed too. Knew too much about what, Gustavo? Gustavo realized he had said too much. His face turned pale.
Gustavo, shut your mouth.
That is not what I meant. I just...
Mr. Gustavo, since we are being honest, perhaps this is a good time to mention an additional clause in the will.
Everyone looked at him.
Miss Adelaide left specific instructions. The will has several parts. The first one was read on the day of her passing, but there are other clauses that will only be revealed when Miss Clara finishes opening all the boxes.
What?
Miss Adelaide was very clear. She said, and I quote, "Clara needs to discover the truth in the right order. Only then will she understand everything, and only when she understands, the rest of the will can be read."
Gustavo was white as paper. Beatrice looked like she was going to faint.
What rest of the will? What else did that old lady write?
That I cannot reveal. But I can say that there are properties involved. Many properties, and some of them may directly interest Mr. Gustavo.
I looked at Gustavo. He was sweating. The arrogant man who had walked into the room half an hour ago had disappeared. In his place, there was someone afraid. Very afraid.
This is blackmail. That old woman is blackmailing me from beyond the grave.
It is not blackmail, Mr. Gustavo. It is the final wish of a woman who knew very well the family she had.
Gustavo grabbed his jacket and headed toward the door. Beatrice followed, still in shock.
This is not over, Clara. Not even close.
They left, slamming the door. Their lawyer followed, without saying anything, probably calculating how much he would charge for this disastrous visit. I stayed in the room with Adelaide's lawyer. The silence was almost comfortable after all that shouting. What just happened here?
Miss Adelaide was a very intelligent woman, Miss Clara. She knew her nephews would try to take everything, and she prepared her will like a trap.
A trap?
Each box you open reveals a part of the story. And each part of the story tightens the noose around Mr. Gustavo a little more. Miss Adelaide did not just want to protect the neighborhood. She wanted justice.
He grabbed his briefcase and headed toward the door.
Keep opening the boxes, Miss Clara. The truth is almost coming out.
He left, and I was alone again. That old woman knew too much. Gustavo's sentence kept echoing in my head. What did Adelaide know? And why was Gustavo so afraid that I would find out? I went to the bedroom and looked at the remaining boxes. There were still 9 to open. And suddenly, I felt like I was no longer just discovering the story of a kind old woman. I was digging up secrets that someone really wanted to keep buried. What was Gustavo so afraid I would find out? The answer was in those boxes, and I was going to find it. After everyone left, I sat in the living room for a long time. The silence of the house felt different now, heavier, as if the walls were holding secrets that wanted to be told. That old woman knew too much. Gustavo's sentence kept echoing in my head. I got up from the couch and went to the bedroom. The boxes were there, waiting. 9 boxes. 9 pieces of a story I still did not fully know. I picked up the 4th box. It was lighter than the others. When I removed the lid, I did not find receipts or letters. I found a notebook, old, with a worn leather cover and pages yellowed by time. It was a diary, Miss Adelaide's diary. My heart raced. This was different from everything I had found so far. It was not proof of what she did. It was her voice, her thoughts, her soul. I opened to the first page. The date was 42 years ago. The handwriting was beautiful, elegant, from someone who had studied in good schools. I started reading. Today marks 1 month since I lost everything. Robert and Thomas, my husband and my son, my entire life taken in a second. A truck, a curve. And it was over. I stopped reading. My hands were shaking. Adelaide had lost her family, her husband and son, in an accident. I continued reading. People tell me to be strong. They say time heals. They say I need to move on. But how do I move on when half of me left with them? Thomas was only 17. He was going to college next year. He wanted to be a doctor. He wanted to help people. I closed my eyes for a moment. The pain in those words was almost physical. I could feel the weight of each sentence. I skipped a few pages. The handwriting changed over time, becoming more shaky, more tired. I sold the company today. I sold the big house. I sold the cars, the jewelry, everything. I do not want any of that anymore. Every object reminds me of them. Every room has a memory that hurts too much. I am going to move. I am going to disappear. I am going to start over somewhere no one knows me. I turned more pages. Adelaide had moved to this neighborhood 40 years ago. She had bought this simple, small, dark house, and she had decided to live like this. But why? The answer came a few pages later. I lost everything I loved. Now I will give everything I have. It is the only way to make the pain worth something. Thomas wanted to help people. I will help for him. In silence, without expecting anything in return. It is my tribute, my way of keeping him alive. Tears were running down my face. I had not even noticed when I started crying. Adelaide was not stingy out of greed. She was living on the minimum so she could give the maximum to others. Every penny she saved was a penny that went to someone who needed it. And she had been doing this for 40 years. In memory of the son who wanted to be a doctor, the son who wanted to help people. I kept flipping through the diary. The entries became more spaced out over the years. But one word started appearing frequently. The project. The project is moving forward. 3 more houses bought this year. They do not know. Nobody knows. And that is how it has to be. The project will protect the neighborhood. When I leave, they will understand. Clara will understand. My name? Adelaide had written my name in the diary, years before I started taking care of her. What do you mean? I went back a few pages looking for more mentions, and then I found an entry that made me freeze. My nephew chose the wrong side. Gustavo works for them now. He does not know that I know. He does not know that I am 1 step ahead. When the time comes, he will find out. And it will be too late. The wrong side. Gustavo was on the wrong side. But the wrong side of what? I kept searching, but the diary did not explain. Adelaide mentioned the project and them several times, but never said exactly what it was. The last entry in the diary was from 3 months ago. I am tired. The body cannot take it anymore, but the project is ready. The boxes are ready. Clara will find them. Clara will understand, and when she understands, she will do the right thing. I trust her. I always have. I closed the diary and held it against my chest. She trusted me. This woman I thought I was helping had actually chosen me. She had planned all of this. She had prepared me for something I still did not fully understand. I looked at the remaining boxes. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There were still 8 boxes left, and in one of them was the answer. What was the project? Who were them? And why was Gustavo on the wrong side? I needed to find out more about Gustavo's past. The diary had given clues, but not answers. I put the diary back in the box and stood up. Adelaide had a project, and Gustavo was on the wrong side. But the wrong side of what? I could not sleep that night. The words from the diary kept spinning in my head. The project, the wrong side, Gustavo. What had Adelaide discovered about her own nephew? The next day, I returned to her house early. I needed to continue. I needed to understand. I picked up the 5th box. It was heavy and had a smell of old paper, the kind that has been stored for decades. When I removed the lid, I found newspaper clippings. Dozens of them. All yellowed, some almost falling apart at the edges. I picked up the first clipping. It was from 30 years ago. The headline said, "Major construction company announces urban revitalization project." I continued reading. The construction company announced ambitious plans yesterday to transform a residential neighborhood into a modern commercial center. The project includes the demolition of more than 50 houses to make way for stores, restaurants, and a large parking lot. Residents in the area are worried. I looked at the date on the clipping, 30 years ago. This neighborhood. I kept searching through the clippings. There were dozens of reports on the same subject. The construction company was pressuring residents to sell their homes. They offered low prices. They threatened lawsuits. They said progress was inevitable. And then I found a photo. It was a newspaper photo, in black and white, a bit blurry. But you could clearly see 2 men shaking hands. One of them was older, in a dark suit, with a salesman's smile. He must have been the owner of the construction company. The other one was Gustavo, 30 years younger, but it was him. The same arrogant face. The same fake smile. Below the photo, the caption read, "Director of Acquisitions for the construction company greets company president after closing $1 million deal." Director of Acquisitions. Gustavo was the guy who convinced people to sell their homes. He was the guy who pressured widows and elderly people. He was the guy who worked to destroy the neighborhood. And Adelaide knew. I picked up the 6th box. This one was lighter. When I opened it, I found letters. They were not thank you letters like the others. They were letters from Gustavo to Adelaide. The first one was from 28 years ago. "Dear Aunt, I hope you are well. I am writing to make a proposal that will benefit you. The construction company where I work is interested in acquiring properties in your area. They are offering a price well above market value. You could live in a much better place, with more comfort. Think about it. With love, Gustavo." With love, what a joke. I picked up the second letter. It was from 2 years later. "Aunt Adelaide, you are being stubborn. The neighborhood is going to change, whether you want it or not. It is better to sell now while they are still paying well. Later, there will be nothing left. Think about your future." The third letter was more direct. "Aunt, why do you insist on living in this old house? You have money. I know you do. You could be in a luxury apartment. This stubbornness makes no sense. The construction company is losing patience. I am losing patience." The fourth letter was almost a threat. "You are standing in the way of progress. All the other neighbors have already sold or are about to sell. You are the only one who resists. This is selfishness, Aunt. Pure selfishness." I counted the letters. There were 15. 15 letters over 20 years. All asking, begging, pressuring Adelaide to sell the house. And Adelaide never answered any of them. But she kept them all. At the bottom of the 6th box, I found more documents. They were deeds, property titles, and a handwritten list in Adelaide's elegant handwriting. It was a list of houses with purchase dates next to each one. I started reading. Robertson Family House, purchased in 1996. Chen Family House, purchased in 1998. Williams Family House, purchased in 1999. Miss Marta's house, purchased in 2002. Mr. Antonio's house, purchased in 2005. The list continued. 23 houses, all purchased by Adelaide over 30 years. She was not just paying off the neighbors' debts, she was buying their houses. In secret. One by one, while Gustavo pressured residents to sell to the construction company, Adelaide got there first. She paid the debts, she bought the houses, and she let the residents continue living in them as if nothing had happened. None of them knew Adelaide was the owner. None of them knew she was protecting the entire neighborhood from the construction company. I leaned against the wall, trying to process all of that. Adelaide had waged a war. A silent, invisible war that lasted 3 decades. On one side, the construction company with its lawyers, its money, its threats. On the other side, a lonely old woman, living in the dark, saving every penny to buy one house at a time. And the commander of the enemy army was her own nephew. Gustavo spent 30 years trying to destroy the neighborhood, and Adelaide spent 30 years stopping him. Without him knowing. Without anyone knowing. Every time Gustavo convinced a resident to sell, Adelaide showed up first and bought the house. Every time the construction company advanced, Adelaide blocked it. And she did all of this alone. In silence. Carrying the pain of having lost her family, carrying the weight of knowing that her own nephew was the villain, carrying the entire neighborhood on her shoulders. That is why she lived in the dark. Every penny saved was a weapon in this war. That is why she was grumpy. If people got close, they would find out. That is why Gustavo was so afraid of the boxes. He knew his aunt kept evidence, but he did not know everything. He did not know that Adelaide had won the war, that the entire neighborhood already belonged to her, that all his work for 30 years had been in vain. I looked at the clippings scattered on the floor, at Gustavo's letters, at the list of houses. Adelaide was not just a kind old woman who helped the neighbors. She was a strategist, a warrior, a woman who used every resource she had to protect people who did not even know they were being protected. And now I understood why she chose me. She needed someone to continue the war, someone to protect what she built, someone who would not sell out to the construction company like her nephew did. She needed me. I put the documents back in the box and looked at the 6 that were still left. Adelaide waged a silent war against her own nephew. And no one knew. But now I knew, and I was going to finish what she started. I went to my house that night. I needed a hot shower, a real bed, and a few hours away from those boxes. My head was exploding with so much information. Adelaide, the construction company, Gustavo, the houses, the project. It was too much to process. I took a long shower, put on old pajamas, and made some tea. I sat on the living room couch and just stared at the wall, trying to organize my thoughts. Adelaide had spent 30 years fighting against her own family. She had sacrificed everything, comfort, friendships, reputation, all to protect a neighborhood that did not even know it was being protected. And Gustavo was the enemy, her own nephew. The clock showed almost 10 at night when I heard a knock at the door. I thought it was strange. I was not expecting anyone. I do not usually get visitors this late. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. My heart froze. It was Gustavo. Alone, without Beatrice, without a lawyer. Without the expensive suit and the usual arrogant pose. He looked different. Nervous. Looking around as if he was afraid of being seen. For a second, I thought about not opening. Pretending I was not home, but something told me he would not leave easily. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Just a little. With the security chain still in place. What do you want, Gustavo?
We need to talk, Clara.
It is 10 at night. We have nothing to talk about.
Please, 5 minutes, it is important.
He said, please. That was new. I looked at him for a moment. The Gustavo I knew would never ask for anything. He demanded, he threatened, he shouted. But this Gustavo at my door looked like a cornered man. Against my better judgment, I removed the chain and opened the door. 5 minutes. He came in quickly, as if he was afraid someone would see. He stood in the middle of my living room, looking around.
Do you live alone?
That is none of your business. What do you want?
I need to know what you found in the boxes.
I crossed my arms. Why do you want to know?
Because my aunt kept everything. Everything, Clara. She was obsessed with it. Receipts, letters, documents. I know there are things of mine in there. Things I wrote to her over the years.
Are you talking about the letters where you pressured her to sell the house? His face went pale.
So you have already seen them?
I saw 15 letters in 20 years, each one more aggressive than the last.
That was work. I was doing my job.
Your job was to pressure your own aunt to leave her house so a construction company could demolish the neighborhood? Gustavo ran his hand through his hair. He was sweating.
You do not understand how these things work. The construction company hired me to make acquisitions. I did not choose the targets. I just did what I was told.
And they told you to go after your own aunt.
She lived right in the middle of the project. Her house was essential. I tried to explain that to her, but she did not want to listen.
And you never stopped to think that maybe she was right not to want to sell? Gustavo was silent for a moment.
Listen, Clara, I did not come here to discuss the past. I came because I need to know what else is in those boxes.
Why? What are you afraid I might discover?
I do not know. That is the problem. My aunt was unpredictable. She could have kept anything, documents, recordings, who knows what. And if there is something there that could hurt me...
Hurt you how?
If something shows up that reveals questionable acquisition methods, I could be in trouble. Serious trouble.
I looked at him. The arrogant man who had walked into my house on the day of the will reading, laughing at the shoeboxes, calling everything garbage. Now he was in my living room, sweating, afraid of what that garbage might reveal. You wanted to inherit her house, did you not? Not for sentimental value. You know the construction company still wants that land. You wanted to sell it to them and become a millionaire. Gustavo looked away.
And what is the problem? The land was just going to sit there anyway. At least I would give it a purpose.
The purpose of tearing everything down and kicking out the neighbors who have lived here for decades.
That is progress, Clara. The city grows, things change. These old houses are worth nothing, but the land is worth millions.
And you wanted those millions for yourself.
I am family. I am the legitimate heir. Why should a nurse who met my aunt 2 years ago get anything?
Because your aunt wanted it that way. Gustavo looked at me. For a second, I saw something different in his eyes. It was not anger. It was desperation.
I am going to make you one last offer. $200,000. In cash, tomorrow. You give me the boxes without opening any more of them and go live your life. Buy a new house, travel, do whatever you want.
And the neighborhood? What happens to the people who live here?
That is not your problem.
It was your aunt's problem.
And look where she is now. She spent her whole life worrying about people who did not even care about her. People who called her a witch. People who crossed the street to avoid saying hello. And in the end, what was left? An old house and a bunch of shoeboxes.
There is much more left than that, Gustavo. You just do not know it yet. He stopped talking. He looked at me with a strange expression.
What do you mean by that?
I did not answer. I was not going to give him that satisfaction. Your 5 minutes are up.
Clara, you are playing with fire. This land is worth a lot of money. There are people who would do anything for an opportunity like this. Anything.
Is that a threat?
It is a warning. I do not know what my aunt kept in those boxes, but if you keep digging, you might find things that will bring trouble. Trouble for you too.
I walked to the door and opened it. Good night, Gustavo. He walked to the door slowly. Before leaving, he stopped and looked at me one last time.
Do not say I did not warn you.
He left. I closed the door and locked it. I put the chain on. I leaned my back against the wood and stayed there, breathing deeply. My hands were shaking. I waited a few minutes until I was sure he had left. Then I grabbed my phone and called Adelaide's lawyer.
Hello?
Mr. Richardson, this is Clara. I am sorry for calling so late.
Did something happen?
Gustavo was here, at my house, alone. He offered me $200,000 for the boxes.
$200,000? He is getting desperate.
He wanted to inherit his aunt's land to sell it to the construction company. He said it is worth millions.
And it is. That neighborhood is in a prime location, with the houses, with the land. We are talking about a lot of money indeed.
He also threatened me. He said I was playing with fire.
He is trying to scare you because he does not know what Miss Adelaide prepared. If he knew the truth, he would be even more desperate.
What do I do?
Keep opening the boxes. The answer is in the last one.
And if he tries something?
Miss Adelaide thought about that too. Trust her. She knew what she was doing.
I thought about Adelaide, the woman everyone called a witch, the woman who spent 30 years waging a silent war against her own nephew. All right, I will continue.
Good girl. And if you need anything, call me. At any time.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. I hung up the phone and sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Gustavo did not know what was in the boxes. He was afraid, but he was not sure. And that fear was making him desperate. He wanted the land. He wanted to sell it to the construction company and get rich. But Adelaide had left everything to me. And he had no idea what that really meant. There were still 6 boxes left. If Gustavo was already like this just because of the letters, imagine when he found out the rest. 6 boxes left, and Gustavo was getting desperate. That could only mean one thing. The worst was yet to come. I should have known that Miss Marta would not be able to keep a secret for long. The next day, when I arrived at Adelaide's house, there were people on the sidewalk. It was not one person. It was not 2. There were at least 20 people standing in front of the house, talking in groups, looking at the door as if they were waiting for something. I parked the car and stayed there for a moment, not knowing what to do. Miss Marta saw me first. She came running towards me, with that smile of someone who did something she should not have, but does not regret it one bit.
Clara, I am so glad you arrived.
Miss Marta, what is all this?
I know you asked me to wait, but I could not help myself. The story was just too big. I only told Miss Lucia, who told Mr. Antonio, who told the Robertson family, and before I knew it, well, you can see for yourself.
I looked at the crowd. I recognized some faces. Miss Lucia, an older woman with gray hair who lived at the end of the street. Mr. Antonio, the widower who always watered his garden early in the morning. The Chen family, who owned a small convenience store on the corner. The Williams, the Garcias, the O'Briens. They were all there. Every single one of them had been helped by Adelaide in some way.
They want to know, Clara. They want to know everything about Adelaide, about what she did, about who she really was.
I took a deep breath. This was not how I had planned it, but maybe it was better this way. Maybe these people deserved to know the truth. All right, let us go inside. I opened the front door and walked in. The crowd followed slowly, respectfully. It was strange to see so many people in a house that had always been so quiet. The living room got crowded. Some people sat on the couch, others stood leaning against the wall. There were people in the hallway, people peeking through the bedroom door. I walked to the center of the living room and looked at everyone. I know you have heard some things about Miss Adelaide, about what she did. An elderly man raised his hand. It was Mr. Thompson. I recognized the name from the receipts.
Is it true that she paid for surgeries, medical treatments?
It is true.
My grandson, 12 years ago, he needed heart surgery. We did not have the money. The health insurance would not cover it. I was already selling the car, the house, everything, and then the hospital called saying someone had paid $87,000. I spent years trying to find out who it was.
It was Miss Adelaide.
My grandson is alive because of her. He's 23 years old now. He's in college, going to be an engineer, and I used to call that woman a witch. I would cross the street just to avoid talking to her.
Mr. Thompson took off his glasses and wiped his eyes. He was crying. The young woman stepped forward. She must have been around 25 years old. Dark hair, big eyes. And the scholarships. Is it true that she paid for people's college? That is also true. I myself found out that my nursing scholarship was paid by her. 8 years ago. I did not even know her back then. Oh my goodness. I received a scholarship 6 years ago to study physical therapy. They said it was from a foundation. I thought it was from the government. What was the name of the foundation? Neighborhood Light. I felt a chill run down my spine. That was the name in Adelaide's journal. The project. It was her. It was Miss Adelaide. The young woman started to cry. An older woman next to her gave her a hug. Miss Marta walked over to me.
Clara, show them the boxes. They need to see.
I looked at all those faces. People who had been saved by Adelaide without knowing it. People who had judged her their whole lives. People who now wanted to understand. All right, come with me. I went to the bedroom. The crowd followed me. The 6 remaining boxes were still there, under the bed. I pulled out the 7th box and placed it on top of the bed. I have not opened this one yet. Let us find out together. I removed the lid. Inside there were more letters. Many letters. But these were different. They were on official letterhead. I picked up the first one. It was from an orphanage. Dear Miss Adelaide, On behalf of all the children at Hope Orphanage, we would like to thank you for your generous donation that allowed the construction of our new dormitory. Thanks to you, 50 children now have a proper place to sleep. May God bless you. The people in the room went silent. I picked up another letter. It was from a school. Dear Miss Adelaide, the scholarship program you funded allowed 23 low-income students to complete high school this year. Many of them will be the first in their families to go to college. You are changing generations. There were more. Many more. Letters from hospitals, schools, shelters, churches, all thanking her for anonymous donations. All without knowing it was the same person behind everything.
Good heavens, how many people did this woman help?
I still do not know, but there are many. Far more than I ever imagined. I grabbed the 8th box. This one was heavier. When I opened it, I found something different. They were photos. Hundreds of photos. Photos of children at an orphanage, smiling in new beds. Photos of students at graduations holding diplomas. Photos of families standing in front of houses with crossed-out sold signs. Photos of patients in hospitals waving goodbye to the camera. And on the back of each photo, a date and a handwritten note. Adelaide's handwriting. Robertson family, house saved 1998. Michael Thompson, successful surgery 2012. Scholarship class, graduation 2019. I passed the photos around. People started grabbing them, looking at them, recognizing faces. A woman screamed.
That is me. Look, that is me at graduation. I was 18 years old.
Another person stepped forward.
That is the dormitory at the orphanage where I grew up. I slept in that bed. I thought it was built with government money.
The photos kept passing from hand to hand. Each one revealed a story. Each one showed a life that Adelaide had touched. And she had kept everything. Every photo, every letter, every piece of evidence that her life had been worth it. Miss Marta was crying openly.
I feel so terrible. So many years calling her a cheapskate, a witch, a grumpy old woman, and she was doing all of this.
You had no way of knowing. Nobody knew.
But why? Why did she insist on hiding it?
I thought about the diary, about Adelaide's story, about the husband and son she lost, because she did not do it to be recognized. She did it because it was the right thing to do, and because it was her way of keeping her son alive. Her son wanted to be a doctor. He wanted to help people. She spent 40 years helping others in his name. The room fell silent. Some people were hugging, others were crying alone. Mr. Antonio, a man in his 80s that I always saw watering the plants, slowly approached. He had a photo in his hand.
This is my wife. She was very sick. The doctor said she needed a new experimental treatment. It cost a fortune. I did not have that money. And then out of nowhere, the hospital said someone had paid for it.
And your wife?
She lived 8 more years. 8 years we would not have had. We got to meet our grandchildren. We celebrated our golden anniversary. All because of this woman.
He looked at the photo in his hand. His wife smiling in a hospital bed.
The last time I spoke to Adelaide, I complained that her cat was making noise. She did not even have a cat. It was the cuckoo clocks. But I complained anyway. And she just looked at me with that stern face and said, "Mind your own business, Mr. Antonio."
He laughed, but it was a sad laugh.
I thought she was being rude. Now I understand. She was taking care of my life. The whole time.
One by one, people started sharing their stories. The Chen family found out that Adelaide had paid for their grandfather's treatment. The Williams discovered that she was the one who paid off the car debt when their father lost his job. The Garcia family found out that the scholarships for their 3 children came from her. The entire neighborhood had been touched by Adelaide. Every family, in one way or another. They were invisible threads connecting everyone to that old woman who lived alone in the dark house. She was not just a neighbor. She was a guardian, a protector that no one knew existed. After almost 2 hours, the room slowly emptied. People left in silence, many still crying. Some stopped to shake my hand, others hugged me. Miss Marta was the last one to leave.
What are you going to do now, Clara?
Keep going. There are still 4 more boxes.
Do you think there are more secrets?
I looked at the remaining boxes. The 9th, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th. The lawyer said the complete truth is in the last box. I need to get there.
If you need anything, just call. I think I speak for the whole neighborhood when I say we are on your side now and on Adelaide's side.
She left and closed the door. I was alone in the house, surrounded by scattered photos and letters. The story of a lifetime dedicated to others. Adelaide was not just a kind woman. She was an invisible architect. She had built a protective network around the entire neighborhood. Each donation was a brick. Each saved life was a wall, and no one saw it. No one knew. Until now. I looked at the 4 remaining boxes. There was still a lot to discover. The letters and photos showed what Adelaide did. But I still did not know how she managed to do all of this. How she protected the neighborhood from the construction company. How she won a 30-year war all by herself. Adelaide did not save people. She saved an entire neighborhood. But I still had to find out how. The next day, I went back to Adelaide's house early. I wanted to open the remaining boxes before anything else happened. 4 boxes. That was all that was left. I grabbed the 9th box and placed it on the bed. It was heavy. Heavier than all the others. When I removed the lid, I found what I was already expecting. Deeds. Contracts. Property records. I started counting, one by one, separating them into piles. 23. 23 houses. Adelaide had bought 23 houses over 30 years, practically the entire block, and the residents kept living in them as if nothing had happened, paying symbolic rents or nothing at all. But one question kept echoing in my head. How? How did an old woman who lived in the dark, who complained about the price of bread, who saved every penny, manage to buy 23 houses? The answer was in the 10th box. When I opened it, my heart stopped. They were not deeds. They were bank statements, investment contracts, reports from a brokerage firm. I picked up the first document. It was a monthly statement from an investment fund. And the amount made me lose my breath. $4 million. $4 million. Adelaide had $4 million invested in stocks. I kept flipping through. There were statements from decades. The amounts kept growing over time, 100,000, 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, and it kept going up. I found a letter from the brokerage firm explaining how the fund worked. Dear Miss Adelaide, as agreed, here is the monthly report on your investments. This month, the net return was $23,000. The amount is available for withdrawal at your convenience. $23,000 per month. Adelaide was receiving $23,000 a month, just from returns, and she lived as if she did not have a penny. Now everything made sense. She was not spending a limited savings. She had an endless source of income. The money she invested 40 years ago kept growing, generating more money every month. Every penny she saved by living simply, eating soup, complaining about the price of everything, was another penny she could give to others. But she did not even need to save that much. She did it out of principle, out of discipline, out of love. I found another document. It was the original fund contract, dated 40 years ago, right after the accident. There was a handwritten note in the corner of the page, Adelaide's handwriting. Robert always said that money sitting still is dead money. He taught me how to invest. Now I will use what he taught me to keep his money alive, to keep helping. Robert, her husband. Adelaide had not just inherited her husband's fortune, she had multiplied it. She had turned it into a machine for helping people, and no one knew. The entire neighborhood thought she was poor. The nephews thought she was poor. Everyone thought so. But she was a millionaire who chose to live in simplicity so she could give with generosity. I was shaking when I finished reading the documents. That was when I heard the sound of cars outside. I went to the window and peeked through the curtain. My stomach sank. 3 cars. Gustavo getting out of one, Beatriz out of another, and their lawyer out of the third. Not again. But this time it was going to be different. I put the investment statements at the bottom of the box, underneath the deeds. I took a deep breath and went to the door. But I did not open it. I stood there, waiting. The doorbell rang.
Clara opened this door.
I opened it just a crack, with the security chain in place. What do you want?
We know you found the deeds. We are coming in to talk.
No, you're not coming in.
What do you mean we're not coming in? This house belonged to our aunt.
It was. Now it is under my responsibility, and I have not finished reading what is in the boxes yet, so you will have to wait.
You cannot stop us from coming in.
Yes, I can. Wait a second. I shut the door in their faces and grabbed my phone. I called Adelaide's lawyer.
Miss Clara?
Mr. Lawyer, Gustavo and Beatriz are here again. They want to come inside the house. Can I forbid them?
You can and you should. The house is under probate, and you are named as the person responsible for its contents. They have no right to enter without your permission. If they insist, it is trespassing.
Thank you. That was what I needed to hear.
I'm on my way. Do not let them in.
I hung up and went back to the door. I opened the crack again. I just spoke to the lawyer. You have no right to enter here. If you try, it is trespassing, and I will call the police.
This is ridiculous. We are the heirs.
The will left the boxes to me, and the house is under probate. You can wait out there until I finish.
Clara, let us be reasonable. 23 houses. That is worth millions. We can make a deal.
There is no deal. I'm going to open all the boxes, discover the whole truth, and then we will talk.
You are playing with fire.
And you are on my property. Literally. I closed the door, this time with force. I stood leaning against the wood, listening to them arguing outside. Gustavo was yelling. Beatriz was trying to calm him down. Their lawyer was saying something about legal procedures. After about 10 minutes, I heard the cars starting and driving away. I smiled. For the first time since all this began, I had taken control. Half an hour later, Adelaide's lawyer arrived.
Did they leave?
They did, but not happily.
Good. You did the right thing by not letting them in.
Mr. Lawyer, I found the investment statements. The $4 million, the monthly returns. They do not know about this, do they?
They have no idea. They think that Mrs. Adelaide lived on a miserable pension her whole life. They do not know she had millions invested.
Why did she never tell them?
Because she knew exactly what her nephews would do if they found out. They would have tried to take the money much earlier. Mrs. Adelaide was smart. Very smart.
What is in the last 2 boxes?
The 11th one has the key. The 12th one has the lock. When you open both, you will understand why Miss Adelaide smiled every time she talked about her nephew.
She smiled?
She used to say, Gustavo thinks he is going to inherit everything. Poor thing. He does not even know there is nothing to inherit.
What do you mean, nothing to inherit?
Open the last boxes tomorrow and call me before you open the 12th one. We are going to need witnesses.
He left. I stood there looking at the 2 boxes that remained. Adelaide was a millionaire, owner of 23 houses. She had an investment fund of $4 million, and she lived 40 years in a simple and humble life. But the lawyer said there was nothing to inherit. What do you mean? The 11th box had the key, but the 12th one had the lock. And I was about to discover what Adelaide had prepared. The lawyer called me the next morning.
Miss Clara, it is time. I summoned everyone for the opening of the last boxes. Gustavo, Beatriz, their lawyer, everyone needs to be present.
Why?
Because Miss Adelaide wanted it this way. She wanted her nephew to see, to hear, to understand that he lost.
When I arrived at Adelaide's house an hour later, I could barely believe what I saw. There were people everywhere. It was not 10 people. It was not 20. There were at least 50 people scattered around the yard, the sidewalk, the entire street, and in front of the house, a van with an antenna on the roof. A reporter was fixing her hair while a cameraman adjusted the camera. I parked the car and walked slowly, trying to understand what was happening. Miss Marta came running toward me.
Clara, you are not going to believe it. Adelaide's story made it to the news.
What do you mean, the news?
Someone told someone who told someone else, and suddenly a reporter showed up asking questions. The neighbor everyone called a witch who secretly saved 23 families. That is what they are calling it.
I looked around. The neighbors were gathered in small circles, talking, pointing at the house. There were people with beach chairs, as if they were watching a show. Mr. Antonio had brought a pitcher of lemonade. Children were running between the adults' legs. It was a real event. The reporter saw me and came toward me with her microphone.
Are you Clara? The nurse who took care of Miss Adelaide?
I am, but I do not.
Is it true that she paid off mortgages, surgeries, and college tuition for dozens of people? Is it true that she bought homes in the neighborhood to protect the residents?
Adelaide's lawyer appeared out of nowhere and stepped between me and the reporter.
Miss Clara will not be giving interviews right now. We have a legal procedure to follow. Maybe later.
He guided me inside the house, but even in there, I could hear the commotion outside. Voices, laughter, the sound of cars parking. This is getting out of control.
On the contrary, it is going exactly as Miss Adelaide wanted.
What do you mean?
She told me once, when I pass, I want the entire neighborhood to know who I really was. I want Gustavo to have to swallow his defeat in front of everyone.
I looked through the window. Gustavo and Beatriz had just arrived. They were standing on the sidewalk, looking at the crowd with desperate faces. The reporter was already heading toward them. Gustavo pushed the camera away and came marching into the house, red with anger.
What is this circus? Who called the press?
The news spread, Mr. Gustavo. A lonely old woman that everyone misjudged who actually saved an entire neighborhood. That is the kind of story people want to hear.
This is humiliating. There are cameras out there.
Then I suggest you behave yourselves. The entire neighborhood is watching.
The room was filling up. Miss Marta came in, followed by Mr. Antonio and Miss Lucia. Then came the Chen family, the Williams family, the Garcia family. Every family Adelaide had helped wanted to be present. Some stood leaning against the wall. Others sat on the floor. There were people peeking through the window. There were people in the hallway. And outside, through the open window, I could see dozens of faces looking in, waiting, watching. It was as if the entire neighborhood was holding its breath. Adelaide's lawyer placed the last 2 boxes on the coffee table.
Very well, we are all here. Miss Clara, you may open the 11th box.
My hands were trembling when I picked up the box. Outside, someone shouted, "Go, Clara!" and other voices echoed in support. I removed the lid slowly. Inside, there was a blue folder, thick, with an official seal on the cover. I opened the folder and read the title of the first document out loud. Articles of Incorporation of the Neighborhood Light Foundation.
Foundation? What foundation?
I continued reading. The room was in absolute silence. Founded 40 years ago by Miss Adelaide, with the purpose of promoting social, educational, and health assistance to people in vulnerable situations, as well as protecting and preserving the neighborhood's housing heritage, ensuring decent housing for its residents.
Miss Adelaide created this foundation right after she moved to the neighborhood. A nonprofit foundation that helped hundreds of people over 4 decades. It paid for surgeries, medical treatments, scholarships, paid off mortgages, all through the foundation. All in silence.
40 years? That is impossible. We never knew about any foundation.
You did not know because Miss Adelaide did not want you to know.
I kept flipping through the documents. There were certificates, records, meeting minutes, all official, all legal. And then I found the part that mattered. Assets of the Neighborhood Light Foundation. 23 residential properties and an investment fund valued at... I stopped. The number on the page was so big that I needed to read it twice to be sure. Valued at $4,200,000. Outside, the silence was absolute. Inside the room, several people brought their hands to their mouths. Dona Marta let out a scream.
$4 million? Adelaide had $4 million?
I was also in shock. I had seen the statements in the previous box, but hearing the number out loud in front of everyone was different.
That is a lie. The old woman barely had money to pay the electricity bill.
Mrs. Adelaide invested this money 40 years ago, right after she lost her husband and her son. She sold everything she had, invested in a fund, and used the returns to help hundreds of people her entire life. Not just the residents of this neighborhood. She paid for surgeries in hospitals around the city, funded scholarships at universities, helped orphanages and shelters. She lived in simplicity by choice, not by necessity.
She lived in the dark, saved on bread, complained about every penny, and had millions this whole time?
She did, and she transferred everything to the foundation from the beginning. The houses, the investments, every penny. Nothing was ever in her personal name. Everything always belonged to the Neighborhood Light Foundation.
That is illegal. She could not do that.
She could, and she did. The foundation was created 40 years ago, long before any inheritance issue existed. Mrs. Adelaide had every right to donate her assets to a foundation, and that is exactly what she did.
I found another document in the folder, a clause highlighted in red. Permanent Protection Clause. The properties belonging to the Neighborhood Light Foundation cannot, under any circumstances, be sold, transferred, or negotiated with companies in the construction sector, real estate developers, or any entities whose objective is the demolition of the properties. Outside, someone started to applaud. The applause spread. In seconds, the entire backyard was clapping.
She knew. That old woman knew the whole time, from the beginning.
Of course she knew. Mrs. Adelaide created this foundation exactly for this, to make sure you would never get your hands on these properties, and to make sure her work would continue even after she was gone.
So the houses, our houses, have belonged to this foundation for 40 years?
That is correct. Every house that Mrs. Adelaide bought was immediately transferred to the foundation. And the foundation's purpose is to protect the residents and continue helping people in need. You can continue living in the houses for as long as you want. No one can evict you. No one can sell. No one can demolish.
The neighbors were hugging each other. Donna Lucia was crying. Mr. Antonio took off his glasses to wipe his eyes.
So there is nothing left? Nothing at all? There was never anything to inherit?
There never was. Mrs. Adelaide made sure of that from the very first day.
But someone needs to manage this foundation, right? Who is the president?
That is the question. Mrs. Adelaide was the president for 40 years. With her passing, the foundation needs a new leader. Otherwise, it will be dissolved.
So there is still a chance.
Not for you. Mrs. Adelaide left instructions about who should take over the presidency. The name is in the last box.
Everyone looked at the 12th box. Still closed, still untouched. Outside, the silence had returned. 50 people holding their breath at the same time. Gustavo took a step toward the table.
Give me that box.
I was faster. I grabbed the box and held it against my chest. No.
Clara, give me that box now.
This box is mine, and I will open it when I am ready.
Mr. Gustavo, there's a reporter filming through the window. I suggest you control yourself.
Gustavo looked at the window. The camera was pointed directly at him. He stepped back, his fists clenched. The whole room was silent. Donna Marta, Mr. Antonio, Donna Lucia. The neighbors at the window. The reporter outside. Everyone waiting. I looked at the box in my hands. The 12th, the last one. Inside it was the name of the new foundation president. The person who would inherit the responsibility of protecting the neighborhood, of continuing Adelaide's work, of helping people she would never meet. The room was in absolute silence, 50 pairs of eyes fixed on me, the reporter filming through the window, Gustavo red with anger, Beatriz pale as wax, and in my hands the 12th box, the last one. I took a deep breath. All right, let us end this. I placed the box on the coffee table. My hands were shaking when I lifted the lid. Inside there were 3 things. An official document with a red seal, a thin black folder, and a white envelope, sealed, with my name written on the front. I picked up the document first. I read the title out loud. Property Transfer Deed, Complete Block.
Complete block? What does that mean?
I continued reading. All properties in the block are hereby transferred to the Light of the Neighborhood Foundation, including residences, commercial establishments, and adjacent land. Totaling. I stopped. I counted the numbers. I read it again to make sure. 37 properties.
37? But you said there were 23 houses.
23 residential houses. But Miss Adelaide also bought the commercial establishments in the block. Stores, offices, the corner building. Everything belongs to the foundation.
I looked at Gustavo. He was doing the math in his head. And then his face turned white.
No.
You understand, do you not?
The corner building, the commercial building, that is where...
Your office. Exactly. Miss Adelaide bought that building 15 years ago. You've been paying rent to your own aunt's foundation all this time, and you did not even know. Outside, someone started laughing. The laughter spread. In seconds, the whole backyard was roaring with laughter.
This is humiliating. This is...
Poetic justice, I would say.
I picked up the black folder. Inside, there was a single document. I read the title. Appointment of President of the Light of the Neighborhood Foundation. My heart raced. I, Adelaide, in full possession of my mental faculties, appoint as my successor to the presidency of the Light of the Neighborhood Foundation, Miss Clara, nurse, resident of this city, who has demonstrated over the years the qualities necessary to continue my work. Compassion, integrity, and a heart that sees beyond appearances. My hands were shaking so much that I almost dropped the paper.
Clara, it is you. You are the president.
The neighbors started to applaud. Donna Lucia was crying. Mr. Antonio came to hug me, but I still had the white envelope in my hands. Adelaide's letter. Wait, there is one more thing. I opened the envelope. Inside there were 2 sheets. The first was addressed to me. The second had another recipient. I read the first letter out loud. Dear Clara, If you are reading this, it means I have already departed, and it means you have opened all the boxes. Tia, you must be scared now. I would be too. But I chose you because I know who you are. You are the person who brought soup to a grumpy old woman twice a week. You are the person who measured my blood pressure even when I complained that the device was cold. You are the person who sat with me in silence when I did not want to talk. You never judged me. You never gave up on me. That is why I trust you. The foundation is your legacy now. Use it to continue what I started. Help those in need. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. And remember, kindness does not need an audience. With eternal love, Adelaide. I was crying. I could not help it. Tears were streaming down my face as I held the letter against my chest.
There is a second letter, Miss Clara.
I looked at the second sheet. It was addressed to Gustavo and Beatriz. Do you want me to read it?
Miss Adelaide wanted it to be read out loud, in front of everyone.
I looked at Gustavo and Beatriz. They were paralyzed. I started reading. Dear nephew and niece, or should I say, dear vultures. I know what you expected. You expected that I would be a foolish old woman who would leave everything for you to waste. You expected to sell my things, tear down my houses, evict my neighbors. You expected to get rich at my expense. But I was always smarter than you imagined. While you were counting the days until my departure, I was building a fortress. Every house I bought was a wall. Every document I signed was a brick. And now that fortress is complete, and you are on the outside. Gustavo, you spent 30 years trying to destroy this neighborhood. Now you will have to find another office, because yours belongs to the foundation. Beatriz, you always looked at me with disgust, as if I were a burden in your life. Now you can look at me from afar, because you will not inherit anything of mine. You chose the wrong side. You chose greed over family. You chose money over love, and now you are reaping what you planted. This is my last lesson for you. Do not underestimate a grumpy old woman, especially one who has 40 years to plan her revenge, without any love, Adelaide. P.S. For those who only see the price of everything, but do not know the value of anything. The silence in the room was deafening. Gustavo was trembling, from anger, from humiliation, from defeat. Beatriz had tears in her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of fury.
This cannot be legal. It is harassment. It is defamation.
It is the truth, Mr. Gustavo. And the truth is not a crime.
I will sue. I will sue the foundation. I will sue you.
You can try. But I suggest you find another lawyer first, and another office. You have 30 days to vacate the property.
Gustavo looked around, at the crowd that was laughing at him, at the camera that was filming his humiliation, at the neighbors he had tried to evict for 30 years.
Let us go, Beatriz.
They left without saying another word. The door slammed shut. And then the entire backyard exploded in applause. The neighbors came into the house, hugging me, crying, laughing. Mrs. Marta kept repeating, I knew it. I knew you were special. Mr. Antonio squeezed my hands so hard I thought he was going to break my fingers. The reporter managed to make her way through the commotion.
Miss Clara, how do you feel being the new president of the foundation?
I looked at the camera. I thought about Adelaide, about the grumpy old woman everyone avoided, about the woman who lived 40 years in darkness to illuminate other people's lives. I feel honored and scared and determined. Mrs. Adelaide dedicated her entire life to helping people in silence. I am going to do everything I can to continue her work. 3 months went by. Adelaide's story went viral. Newspapers, magazines, television programs. Everyone wanted to tell the story of the old witch who was actually a saint. I gave more interviews than I can count. But the best part came later. The city decided to turn Adelaide's house into a museum. The Neighborhood Light Museum. A place to tell her story, to show the boxes, the letters, the photos of all the people she helped. The opening was on a sunny Saturday. The whole neighborhood showed up. There were banners on the streets, balloons in the trees, children running around with shirts that said, Adelaide, our hero. At the museum entrance, they placed a bronze plaque with her favorite saying, for those who only see the price of everything, but do not know the value of anything. But the most important ceremony was not at the museum. It was at the cemetery. 1 week after the opening, we organized a tribute at Adelaide's grave. It was no longer a simple, abandoned tombstone. The foundation had arranged a white marble monument with her name engraved in golden letters. There were more than 100 people there. Neighbors, families she helped, students who received scholarships, patients who survived thanks to the surgeries she paid for. There were even people who came from other cities just to say thank you. The reporter who covered the opening of the boxes was there too, broadcasting live.
We are here at the municipal cemetery, where more than 100 people have gathered to honor Adelaide, the woman who spent 40 years secretly helping strangers. A story that moved the entire country.
I walked up to the grave. There were flowers everywhere. Roses, daisies, sunflowers. Each person had brought something. I placed my hand on the cold tombstone. Mrs. Adelaide, you would probably complain about all this attention. You would say we are making too much noise. You would frown and tell everyone to go away. People left. But you are not here to complain anymore. So we are going to do it our way. You spent 40 years in hiding. Now the whole world knows who you were. And you deserve every round of applause, every tear, every flower. I took a deep breath. You taught me that kindness does not need an audience, that helping is not about recognition, it is about doing the right thing. You taught me that one person alone can change the world, one act of kindness at a time. I looked at the crowd around me. I promised to continue what you started. The Neighborhood Light Foundation will keep helping people. We will pay for surgeries, college tuitions, mortgages. We will protect those who need protection, and we will do it the way you did it, without expecting anything in return. Mrs. Marta started to cry. Mr. Antonio took off his glasses to wipe his eyes. Even the reporter looked moved. Rest in peace, Mrs. Adelaide. You did enough. Now it is our turn. I stepped away from the grave. One by one, people came closer, leaving flowers, saying thank you. Some prayed. Others just stood there in silence, paying a debt they would never be able to repay. The ceremony lasted 3 hours. When it finally ended, I was alone in the cemetery. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. I looked at the tombstone one last time. Thank you, Mrs. Adelaide, for everything. Every week I walk by her house, which is now the museum, and the lights have never gone out again. Mrs. Adelaide taught me that true kindness does not make noise. It acts in silence, and when you least expect it, it changes the world. But what about you? Have you ever been through something similar? Or do you know someone who, behind a difficult attitude, was hiding a heart of gold? I would love to read your story in the comments. And if you believe the world needs more people like Mrs. Adelaide, leave your like and comment the word value. That helps our message reach more hearts. Oh, and do not forget to subscribe here to Soulful Love Tales. I will be back soon with another story for us to share together. A kiss from Clara, and see you next time.